ProTech 2020 Cybervision, your view on cybersecurity with Richard Stiennon and Andy Crocker. Hi, welcome to ProTech 2020 Cybervision, your view on cybersecurity. I'm Andy Crocker and I'm with...
Hi, I'm Richard Stiennon.
Hi Richard, good to see you.
Always good to see you, Andy.
Okay, this week we're going to speak about DDoS. This is our third broadcast, and to those people listening and watching, please remember, if you are enjoying our chats, please hit the subscribe button and give us a thumbs up to say you're enjoying it. Also, hit the bell to get any alerts for new chats that we put up. So as I said, Richard, we're going to talk about DDoS this week. As you know, we've, as a security company, have had to deal with a client who had an attack this week. As you know, I broke my teeth on DDoS attacks really back in 2002, 2003, when the Russian gang were hacking or attacking UK clients or UK companies that were online gaming companies, and they were getting hit by DDoS. And in those days, there wasn't any real mitigation until Barrett came along with his Prolexic. Barrett's one of the first. So we had some problems. So I quite enjoy DDoS. I sort of enjoyed dealing with it over the years.
It's very personal. It's very one-on-one because the attacker has to, it's not just a worm going off and doing its thing. It's the attacker is targeting you. They want your site to go down or your service, whatever you've got up on the internet. And so it's very visceral and personal, right?
Yeah, it is. They spend a lot of time. As you know, I interviewed a few people after we arrested them about it, and I've spoken to them about what they have to do an attack. And yeah, there's a lot of reconnaissance goes on to look at all your domains and look at your IP addresses and where you locate your servers, what protection you've got and stuff like that. But of course, obviously they also have to build up their botnets. I know right. More recently they can hire botnets, but in the beginning they had to build up their own botnets.
It was in that time frame when North Korea developed a worm that would recruit people's computers into a botnet, and it spread they launched it in July, and it infected 250,000 devices. And then they turned all those machines onto the websites of a lot of government agencies, including Treasury, whitehouse.gov, and just took them all down. It was very embarrassing. And Dick Clark was the cyber czar at the time. And of course, he came up with the defense. He put all of the US government websites on Akamai, which was a CDN, right? A content delivery network, which is a great defense, right? Because the first D in DDoS is distributed, meaning that you can only do so much with one computer and one internet connection. But if you have thousands or hundreds of thousands, they could all be requesting the same web page or some other protocol to take down a site. So with a CDN, you just push the content all the way out to the edge, and now you reduce the number that can hit each version of the content.
Yeah, that was a huge attacks against the US then.
Yeah, that was quite the show of force, and of course they, like everything in cyber defense, there's this back and forth, and the attackers develop a new methodology and the defenders develop a new defense, and it escalates a little in technology, but it reaches a status quo where we are today, right? People who have never been DDoSed are still completely vulnerable to it, as you're discovering with some of your clients. And they get hit and they figure out, we have to go behind a CDN like Cloudflare, which has some additional defenses in it against DDoS attacks.
Yeah. And if you go right back to the beginning, I remember before it was when it was DOS, when it was the denial of service attack. And I remember, I was on IRC, Internet Relay Chat. And, Internet Relay Chat was in its infancy and everybody's chatting away and our room's better than your room. And we created bots, these egg bots, just to keep our rooms open, because once everybody left the room ended, and we wanted to keep the rooms open. And then we created more and more of them, of these bots. And we would then, and people then would push them onto another room so that the room would collapse because it was overfilled with too many subscribers or too many bots trying to get into it. First, denial of service attacks, and and I was, a witness to that on Internet Relay Chat, quite a bit of it, and then it.
It's actually how Barrett got started. He was running a BBS,
Yeah.
and he had to fight off the people who kept dropping what'd you call it, the pearl dropper. So yeah, that's how
The
he
egg
got
bot
it.
was one I remember.
Yeah,
Yeah.
big drop.
Yeah, and yeah, it was just quite interesting times being on into, but it's developed so much more from that. If we just go through a little bit of history around it, if we go back to Estonia, the attack on Estonia was massive botnets, and that was at the advent of botnets for hire, because we used to see them with the Russian business network in St. Petersburg. They had massive botnets. They were all on servers that were difficult to get taken down, and they were saying the command and control server was on the servers in St. Petersburg, and they was we bulletproof hosting, come with us, and you can rent our botnets from us. But when you look at some of the first of the ones that I dealt with were, compared to today's botnets, minuscule in size.
Oh yeah.
Megabits we're talking about.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you used to be able to take down a website. We're talking really early days, so 95.
Oh,
I used to be able to freeze a website just by hitting enter over and over when you're on a website, and that would reload it. And the Internet Explorer and Netscape eventually removed that function, but it was so easy to take down a website because you exceed the capacity of the web server to answer all those requests. Yeah. And it was simple to do. And then of course we used to do ping floods, which were simple. You can still do a ping flood, but it can't generate enough packets to slow anything down. But then somebody said, hey, I got an idea. I'm going to create an app that can spew pings and UDP packets, SYN floods, which is another protocol.
SYN floods are the big one.
And that's called the low orbit ion cannon. It's still around, and people are still downloading it and using it. And gamers love it because then they can, I don't know if they know where their opponent is or what their IP address is, but they'll hit them to slow down their reaction times so they can get an edge in whatever game they're playing.
On a more sinister note, we saw the LOIC, the low orbit ionic cannon, being used or being distributed on hacker.ru in Russia, and on the website stopgeorgia.ru. First of all, we had the attack against Estonia, as I've already mentioned, but then when the ground attack was going in against Georgia, when the Russia was in conflict with Georgia, and you saw the hacking going on there, or the groups use the DDoS attacks going in, which was using LOIC to run the attacks, and you saw it being distributed by the people that were organizing the attack, which we believe was the GRU. And we could see that being distributed out to the youth of Russia who were hacking for them.
And then there was an instance, I think 2009, after a kind of contested election in Iran, and Twitter was there by then, and there was kind of an uprising on Twitter encouraging people to take down the president of Iran's website. And they were telling people how to download LOIC.
I remember.
As well as simple tools like pagereload.com. You could just go to that page, and it was running a JavaScript in it that would just reload the target page constantly. So you could just leave it alone. Yeah. And I remember I had to get a screenshot of that. So I jumped on the page, took a screenshot, and got off because I didn't necessarily want to participate in a DDoS attack because it's probably not legal. And I'm not a hacker, so I don't do that. But there I was.
Yeah, and then we saw. So we still back then though, we're still in the multiple megabit size attacks, which were quite small. And then we saw the first gigabyte one, and that was when we found out about amplification. Do you want to explain what amplification is?
Yeah, sure. So probably the most common is using a open DNS server. So DNS has to be there, has to be listening to the worlds because people are asking, hey, what's the website address or what's the IP address if I've got this domain website address. So it's possible to send a UDP packet that requires no handshake, no back and forth. So you send a packet to it as if it came from your target's IP address. And so you're basically saying, hey, give me everything you've got, give me 20 megabytes worth of data. And it only takes, a couple of bytes in order to send this packet. So you send it to the DNS server and the DNS server responds with the 20 megabyte package delivered to your target. So you just find 1,000 of those DNS servers and you spew your request to them over and over and over. And pretty soon gigabytes of traffic are hitting the target.
Yeah, and DNS is just one way of amplification.
Sure.
There are other ways to do it, but it's provided. All you want is something that you send one message to, and they then, whatever it is, then sends multiples of that message to your target. That's amplification. And from that, we saw the first gigabyte attacks, and we were, wow, And if you look at Prolexic, Barrett, when he first started, the clean pipe that he would do, he would run everything through his clean pipe and just feed it because his service was bigger than the bad guy's service, if you like. So he was able to run it, give them only their clean traffic. Of course, that had to change then later on when amplification came out, and you had to have even bigger pipes to try and do it. But that now there's new types of mitigation and stuff like that. So crowdsourcing, that's another way of carrying out DDoS attacks.
Sure. And you already mentioned the ones in Estonia, where the Russian hacking teams encourage people to use different methods and they give them targets. That's going on today in between Ukraine and Russia, as Ukraine has been posting targets of attack, and then people take them down, and Anonymous gets involved to do that. So it's still super common. It's just like people throwing stones in the street.
I was involved in during Estonia time and prior to that, involved in the taking down of botnets. We developed a methodology of killing botnets as they were working because we couldn't understand how they could do it. And this is in the early days again, when it was normally an IRC server that was, or something like an IRC server that was the command and control server, and everything called up to that. And they just run a script, tell them, right, they would say, hey, I'm here, what do you want me to do? And then all of a sudden they would send all of them out and go and ask this question of that website. Give us all your, if it was a gambling website, give us all the odds on the horses in all the races for the next 2 months. And of course, and it's knocking the server off. But we sort of had to work out how we could stop some of these attacks, because these attacks were costing companies money, a lot of money. And I remember one gaming company from the UK, the guy was on the phone to me while I was in Moscow, and he was virtually in tears saying, you've got to stop it. I'm going to go out of business. I'm going to lose everything if you don't stop this. It's killing me. So we developed this methodology of, you need to be able to take 3 points of the botnet down. And that's always the thing. You need the 3 points. You need the DNS so that you can change the DNS, because as you know, what they do is they can move servers very quickly, and they can move where the command and control server is, and they can move the botnet around. So you need to have the DNS. You need to have the registration company on board that where the domain was registered and where the domains have been registered. And you need the command and control server location. So you need to be able to get all 3 down at one time, because if one of those fails, then the bad guy still has control of the botnet. So you can then put it back up, you can move it and hide it and everything else. So I was in Prague, having been at the Microsoft Botnet Task Force meeting there. It was great. I was speaking at that about what we had done in Russia, and the Russian team, Igor, was with me, and were speaking, and I met a lot of guys from the US Secret Service who were fantastic guys. If anybody says to you who are the best guys to help you when you've got a crisis like this on cyber in America, I would 100% go with the Secret Service. I met some guys, extremely knowledgeable, and Trevor, I won't say their full names now, Trevor and Rob were people that were fantastic, although Trevor's retired now. Trevor, fantastic, and I'm still friendly with him. And Rob was a good guy. He's also retired. And Rob said to me, Andy, look, if you need any help taking these down, let me know. So I'd explained we'd taken one down so far. We'd taken about 3 down. We were taken down individually. And I said, well, I might just call you up on that. I might take you up on that. And he said, yeah, well, look, get us the letter of request through, and I'll get the people out to you. So I thought, right, I'm going to test you. So I went back. I actually left Prague and went back to Moscow. And I'm standing in Moscow, and we can see these 3 botnets that the bad guy who was located in Kazakhstan was running, and we wanted to take them down. So I rang up Ed Gibson, who was the legat at the embassy in London, an FBI guy. Fantastic guy, Ed, really, really helpful, very knowledgeable. I rang him and I said, look, I need to get this out. I need to get this MLAT, this Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty paperwork over to the US, to Rob, who's a Secret Service team leader, and he's promised me he's going to help me take this down. No problems, Andy. I'll help you with that. So Rob gets the paperwork. Ed pushes it through for me quickly, which was great, and Rob gets it. So I said, right, Thursday we're going to take down these 3 botnets all in one go. I want all 3 taken down simultaneously, so we've got 3 locations in the US for the command and control service at 3 separate locations. One was in New York, one was in Houston in Texas, and one was down in Silicon Valley, down in San Jose. And then we had one registrant in the US, one in France, one in the UK. And then we had a couple of DNS spread around the world. I won't bore you anymore with that. So, of course, with the timings, with it being US, and we had to get US, the server companies had to be open, etc., so they could get in there. It had to be sort of midday-ish US time, which is nighttime in Russia, which is late afternoon, early evening in France, and whatever. So we've been sitting around waiting now to get this done. So in the end, Igor, the colonel I work with, Igor Yakovlev, fantastic guy. We go off to this Japanese restaurant for sushi, and I remember we had this big boat of sushi in front of us, but we've got a bank of telephones, mobile telephones, all Nokia ones, and we've got them in front of us, and I've got all these people on the line. I've got Rob in the US at one location. I've got another guy in the US at another location. I've got all these phones going, and I'm going, right, 1, 2, 3, now, and everybody took it down, and it was fantastic to see all 3 botnets just went straight down. And it was really, really good fun. So we decided about a month later, because this guy, well, it was longer than that. It was about 4 or 5 months later, actually. This guy that was the bad guy, we couldn't get to him. He was in Kazakhstan. Brain, I think his nickname was. And he had built up these 3 botnets, and now he was building up more. So he built up 5. So we decided we would take 5 botnets down, and we'd see whether we could do 5. So again, I have all these phones. We're not in the Japanese restaurant this time. We're in an office this time. We've got all these phones everywhere, and we've got all these people on the end of the lines. Now I've got Russian people who... A couple of the Russian guys that were on it couldn't speak a word of English, but they're on the phone just to say now. And I had them practicing say now like this, and so we get it all set up, and sure enough, we take 5 botnets down, and we kill all 5 botnets, and they're gone, and we were able to sort of thing. And we were monitoring the bad guy in Kazakhstan, and we were monitoring his online chat on the various forums he was on, and he was going bananas. This is I'm going to give up with these botnets. Every time I put one up, somebody kicks him down. I had 5 taken down yesterday. This is terrible. I think somebody's grassing me up. I think somebody's splitting on me and telling on me. We were just monitoring him on the forums, and he kept saying what he was doing. So loose lips sink ships. It was great, really good fun.
Oh,
so anyway, sorry. Let's go back to the facts. So we've looked at DDoS now. We know the types of DDoS. We now know how big they can be nowadays. And there's, like I said, there's been a resurgence. Very recently, there's been a lot of resurgence in it. And, companies are, if they're not protected, are suffering. And they're all getting the ransom demand. As you know, what happens is they get their website taken offline. And if they're an online trader, for them, that's their livelihood. They can't trade if they can't get their websites up. And then they get the email saying, pay me 50,000 US dollars via Bitcoin, or pay me 1 Bitcoin or whatever, 1.5 Bitcoins, or your site is staying down. And, it's this demand to think. And they will keep them down.
Yep.
One thing I will tell you is, having worked in this field for a long, long time, is that most of the criminals, they're there to make money. If you have defenses, or if you're able to fight off that attack, they will just go away, because they don't want to put their resources constant at your thing that's being protected, because they keep struggling to get you down. They might be causing you some distress, but you're able to fight it off. They want to go to someone that's going to pay up straight away, because they take them offline for ages and they can't get back on, so they'll pay. So, if you've got the defenses, they will leave you alone. And I remember when I was interviewing Maxikoff, and it was quite funny, because Barrett thought this was the best thing he could have ever said to him. And I told Barrett, and he's going, yeah, well, you know what Barrett said. He was so chuffed in the fact that when I was interviewing Maxikoff, who had huge botnets, and I said, right, what? He said, well, if they ever had an IP address of this, we wouldn't go after them. And I said, why is that? He said, oh, they're too big, couldn't get through the defenses. So when I was telling Barrett this afterwards, after we were going through what had happened at court, etc., he said, that was my IP address. That was the IP address of Prolexic. That was what we did. And we were in front of them to stop the attacks. So, great, we were successful in defending them, which was really good. Sorry, go on.
I think that's the perfect defense, when you just shun the attackers from even looking at you, which I'm sure is 99% of the value of being behind a CDN like Cloudflare or Prolexic and Akamai. They see that right away. It's really easy to tell when somebody's behind Cloudflare.
Yeah.
And they're going to go, not worth it. Right. So it's kind of I'm not pitching everybody jump on Cloudflare, though it's something that I do for my websites. It's just a valuable thing to do. The other thing, of course, is much like, defending against ransomware involves backing up your data. You should back up your website and be prepared to bring it up on a different service altogether. You can do that in a few minutes if you've got a place to put it. Yeah. And then you just change DNS, and it might take an hour for DNS to update around the world. But in the meantime, you're back up and running.
But yeah, no, you're right. And AWS is a great service. If you've got, trouble is the companies that have built up their systems on AWS, and they take it for granted that because it's on AWS, it's Amazon, they've got all this. They forget to turn on the DDoS shield. It's a service that AWS provide, but you have to turn it on. And there are companies out there, and there are many websites that are on AWS that haven't turned on. Press the button that says DDoS shield.
There you go. There you go. The takeaway from today's episode is turn on your DDoS shield at AWS.
Yeah, that's the first one. And the other one is just make sure that you've got DDoS mitigation available. Get your site behind someone like Cloudflare or something. Even if you're not having it behind you all the time, because maybe you're a small company, get behind it as soon as you get a DDoS attack, and get that DNS sorted out straight away, so that it doesn't affect you. And don't pay the ransom.
Yeah, definitely don't pay the ransom.
Yeah.
All right, I think we did a good job of covering DDoS and even how to protect yourself.
I think it was quite interesting. Hope everybody enjoyed it out there. If you did, remember, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, and also hit the bell so you know when we're going to be on next. Richard, as always, it's been a pleasure chatting to you. I hope that you found it interesting. I certainly did.
I always like listening to your stories, Andy.
Great. Okay. Well, bye everyone, and see you soon.